Also, I would like to make another point about the NHS, which when I was doing my when I was Scheiße. Also, I was in Basildon Hospital, when I was with well, basically with amputee patients. This is something that went on that I really didn't agree with. There was an amputee patient, and he was told he was only allowed to have a purchasing stool or a bath board. So his option is to bum hop up the stairs, or what was it? Or have a purchasing stool. So a purchasing stool, is that correct? Yeah, purchasing stool downstairs, or has to bum hop to have a bath, because then he would have the bath board on top of the bath. He wasn't allowed both. He was only allowed one or the other. He was livid. He was absolutely furious. He said, "I've paid how much into the NHS, and you're telling me I only get one or the other?" And at the time, I felt I completely was on his side. My supervisor, however much I've adored her, and I have, and she's a fantastic OT, so I've nothing against her in any way, but I never understood why that was the procedure. And I know it was all about the money management. And one thing I will say is, when I was in Basildon Hospital, just before I left, it became all of a sudden more about it was all about statistics. It was all suddenly new managers came along, and everything changed, and it all became about figures that you have to you basically have to say how long the intervention is, a statistic, I can't remember what it was, like a chart or something you had to fill in. But basically how it all ended up becoming is a patient becomes a number. They're no longer a person, they're a number. And that's what's happened. The managers that have taken over have made this into a business and not a caring environment. And what upset me the most is when I chose OT for a reason. I believed in it. I loved the fact that it was holistic. I loved what it was all about. Before I went to university, my mum gave me a book. I didn't know where I wanted to go to for university, and my mum was a physiotherapist, but she gave me she said, I think you might really like occupational therapy. And I looked into it, and I fell in love with it. And I loved the fact that I could travel around the world, and I loved what it was all about. I loved how it was so diverse. I loved that it was so holistic, and I fell in love with occupational therapy, and the fact that you can work with children, it's paediatrics, it's all different areas. And yeah, and then I started working for the NHS, and let me tell you, I was sucked dry. My blood was sucked dry, and all I ever wanted to do was do a good job. And for that, I've for example, where was I? In Basildon, it was a complicated situation, but because I was a qualified OT at the time, once I'd qualified, I didn't feel ready to work as an OT, so I was working as an OT assistant. So there was a physio who took advantage of the fact that I was a qualified OT, and he was getting me to do stuff on his ward that the locum OT wasn't able to do, and he was trying to get me to do that. But at the same time I was doing that role, I was also carrying out the OTA role, and so all the OT assistants got annoyed at me because I'm not doing the menial OTA tasks. And also my housemate I lived with, Carol, she always would take us to the hospital, and Carol was get up. And Carol would always stay very late. And as that thing started happening, basically, I started doing all the stuff for the physio, and doing the OT role. Basically, I worked myself to the bone. I would get up early. I'd work till 8 o'clock in the evening till we'd all go back again. And basically I've exhausted myself because I was carrying out two roles. And he manipulated me. He said, it'd be good for you, it'd be good for you to get the experience. But actually he used me because the locum was doing such a crap job. So he knew I was qualified, and he manipulated me. He completely and utterly manipulated me. And then I got in big trouble because the OT assistants thought I was being really lazy and wasn't doing the menial tasks. So then I got in trouble by my supervisor, and yeah, so that was, and then it was really hard to explain kind of what happened. And then basically one day I was going to see a patient, and I was wheeling the patient, wasn't I? Yeah, and I just suddenly felt my legs were going to collapse, and I just couldn't move anymore. And then I said to my supervisor, I said, I've something really wrong with me. And then I went to lie down on the treatment bed, lay down, and couldn't move at all. And then I was sent home, and basically 2 weeks I was in bed. For 2 weeks I'd overexhausted myself working for the NHS. They sucked my blood dry. After that, I decided, I had found out I was going to be working as an OT in, I think, a couple of months. So I decided, right, I'm going to stop now. And I think I made sure I had my notice in, because I knew I was going to start working as OT. And I think I went to Spain and worked. Yeah, I did go to Spain and worked as an au pair out there. But yeah, so there was a lot of things I found in it just where you just get sucked right. And another thing what I didn't like was when I was on one of my placements in mental health, there were support workers that were speaking really poorly about patients with dementia, and it was disgusting to watch. It was absolutely disgusting to watch. And also when I was in Waymarks, there were support workers that were making fun of there was an obese patient, and they were making fun of him like behind his back, and he had sleep apnea, and I thought it was disgusting behaviour. There was a suicidal guy who was really afraid to use public transport. They were laughing about him, and actually they would laugh in the office, and they would overhear it, and I was just disgusted by what went on. To be honest, I didn't want anything to do with mental health services anymore, because whilst working as an OT in the mental health service, I've watched staff treat patients quite horrifically. And I must admit, whilst we were admitted in Basel Mental Health Hospital, the way all of us patients were treated was disgusting. In the assessment centre, right, it was Christmas time, it's when all the snow had arrived. Did we have any heating in that time period? No. There was no heating. We were absolutely freezing cold. There was no heating. So we were all stuck there for I think it was 3 days, no heating. We were frozen. And then also it was absolute chaos. We had police. It was an absolute nightmare. It was absolute mayhem. And all of a sudden, then some staff members came, I think, a day later, and suddenly rules started coming in. But it was just a joke. It was an absolute joke. And then when we were on the ward, I was not happy, because basically there were lots of all the people that were in the hospital on the ward, or the people I got to know who weren't just on my ward or on other wards. They were all having big problems with the consultants. Big problems. I obviously, thank God I'm an OT, hey, so I was able to rescue them all, because I knew for them to get out, they need to engage with occupational therapy. They didn't understand what occupational therapy was about. I'm an occupational therapist. I know the system. I know exactly how it works. I told them all, listen, the only way you can get out is if you engage in occupational therapy. That's the only way you're getting out. And also, I said, argue against if you're not happy with your medication, or you need to argue, because basically they are, this is another thing, they were being punished. This is what I didn't like. They're not allowed to smoke, okay, but you've got people that have come into the mental health ward, okay, but they're addicted to cigarettes the minute they've come in. Anyone that's addicted is going to suffer from withdrawal symptoms, so they're being punished. They were given these plastic things to smoke from. It made all of them cough constantly. It did awful things to their body, and it was disgusting behaviour. So none of them could cope, so they were all wanting to smoke. So they would all sneak cigarettes, and then they'd get punished for smoking, and then they would be banned from going on whatever it is on leave from going on the ward. And to be honest, we were treated like it was like a prison cell. Oh yeah, this is another thing. The security guards were the only ones with the keys to the ward, which was absolutely ridiculous. I don't understand why the security staff, who've got no understanding of mental health, why are they the only ones with the keys to the doors? Why? We had to ask the security staff to be able to leave the ward. Also, when it comes to charging our phones, again, it's the security staff's role. So they would get very annoyed with us when we wanted to ask to charge our phones. We're a nuisance, and things like that. And it's like, hang on a second. And also another thing I didn't like, we had psychotic patients mixed with people who were just about due to be discharged. So they mixed highly psychotic patients with people just about to be discharged. Can you imagine? And also, not only that, we had a female bedroom, a female lounge and a male lounge. Do you know what? We were left there. I was there for a month, because there was no beds in Rochford Hospital. Do you know what we was able to do all day? All day we had a TV, and that's it. That's all we could do. All day, just sit there. And OT, we would have maybe once, I think it was a week, a small little activity, and that's all we had. Apart from that, we had to sit, and we were like zombies. It was disgusting. And then also there was a girl that was really into sport. The consultant got really annoyed with her because she was kicking around a ball or something, and I thought, do you know what? Who do you think you are? If she likes doing sport, she's every right to be playing with it. And then I made a fuss. I think we had a meeting, with the psychologist, and she wanted to know, and I stood up and I said, look, I said, he's no right to do that. She said, if she likes sport, then I said, this is ridiculous. We're all being cooped up. I said, it's not fair what's going on. We're all just cooped up in living rooms all day. We were treated like prisoners. That's the reality. It was like we were in a prison cell, and I'm not kidding you. I felt like I was in a prison cell from the assessment centre and to the ward. And I'm not saying some of the staff, because there was definitely some lovely staff there, but the way the rules worked was insane. And the reality was the staff didn't have time for us. They were rushing around constantly. It was constant mayhem. There would be security risks. Oh, and this is another thing. So there'd be a security risk. And so there's a security risk. I came to the board. I'd come from, because I was voluntary on my ad, and so I'd come from the canteen and I'd come back to the ward, and there was a security risk. So I couldn't, and then you have to understand, there's no heating in the hallway. So there's only heating on in the ward. So the assessment centre, we had no heating whatsoever. It was absolutely freezing. But once I got onto the ward, thank God there was heating there. But once you come outside the ward, outside the door, there's no heating. It's absolutely freezing cold. So you go from one extreme to the next. Anyway, so I get there, there's a security risk, and I thought, well, I'm not going to stand out in the freezing cold waiting while they sort the security risk out. So I thought, no way. So I went back, and I went back to the canteen, and then came back. They still hadn't resolved the security risk. I thought, oh, for goodness sake. So I went back again, because I thought, why the hell should I have to stand in the freezing cold whilst they sort out the security risk? Then I come back and I get told off. And I said, well, actually, I'm sorry, but why do I have to wait in the freezing cold while you sort out the security risk? It's not good enough. And it's not good enough that we're being scolded for wanting to charge our phones. And also what really got on my nerves is the staff get to leave the madness. They get to leave the chaos. We have to stay in the chaos 24/7. It is not good enough. There's so much ignorance and no understanding of what it's like to be in an acute mental health ward. No understanding. And it's unfair. Staff can leave the chaos and go back to normality. Patients can't. We were stuck there. And this is what annoys me. And patients were treated like dirt. I have to say, the consultants, apparently I caused a lot of problems, because I knew the Mental Health Act, and I downloaded it all and I sent it across to everyone, and I said, use this against your consultants, because they were trying to punish them. They had to use their solicitors. And I said, I think a lot of them, on benefits, and I gave them all the mental health acts. I downloaded. I'm extremely good at research. Consultants didn't like me because I was causing a lot of problems. And I tell you what, I have had it with arrogant consultants. I've had it with arrogant consultants. And only another arrogant consultant was my mum's consultant in a hospital in London, telling me that my mum still has 10 years to live after she had her thyroid removed. She looks, my mum was still really worried, concerned, and he was so arrogant and so dismissive of me and my mum, and just, you've got another 10 years to live. Oh yeah, really, 10 years to live. She died 6 months later. The arrogance of some of these consultants. I know this is what I don't like about consultants, and I really will speak loudly about this. They're at the top of the hierarchy. They're at the top of the hierarchy. Everyone has to bow down to the consultants. Well, let me tell you something. If we know the law, we can argue against you. I'm so fed up with arrogant consultants thinking that they can treat people like a piece of dirt. I don't care that you have got your degrees and you've gotten where you are. It is not good enough. And we, in the NHS, if I was working in the NHS, I couldn't stand up to a consultant. You can't, because they're the ones that are in charge. It is disgusting, and this is how they get away with their behaviour. And this is why that consultant in Basel Mental Health Hospital got away with what she did to me. I'm fed up to my teeth of arrogant consultants. And the one that said to me and my mum that she was going to live for 10 years, it's a joke. She died 6 months later. I want this sorted out. I do not like that the consultants are on the hierarchy level and we're getting all treated like a piece of dirt. It's not good enough. It's not good enough. They need to be investigated. And I thank God I know my mental health. Thank God, and I know my research, and I caused a lot of problems, and the consultants didn't like me, and everyone said that. They said, Tanya, you're causing a lot of problems. And do you know what? I don't care. I've had it with arrogant consultants. I've had my limit with them. I've absolutely had it. I'm fed up to my teeth of arrogant consultants. The biggest problem is they're at the top of the hierarchy, and I'm fed up with you arrogant consultants.